All right, well, we can consider this like a 2.0, if you will, of what Chris talked about for training to win. So we have people in here who are competitors who have various, competitions in their calendar throughout their year who, are going to be very clearly like stacked up against, a field of people and shown how good they are. Like very objective if you're successful or not when you're a competitor. And we have other people who are more competitive with themselves. And I think having a bit of both is probably a little bit healthy. Even as someone who is going out and competing against other people, you want to go about finding your best. And if you do that, it'll help you stay more engaged in my experience over the long term versus just like comparing myself versus what Sam can snatch. I'm always going to be disappointed, right? Whereas if I'm like, hey, can I get to 102% of what I was in 2023? Then that's like one of those things that's going to help keep me engaged. So more so here, I want to talk about like if you're actually getting ready to go to a competition, what are some of the things that are very concrete that you could go through that are going to help you have your best outcomes, right? And this doesn't really matter if it's a 3-day CrossFit competition or if it's a local obstacle course race, or you're going to go do a 10K in Philly over the weekend or something, right? Like it doesn't really matter. A lot of the same things are going to go into place. So, but I'm going to speak on obviously the majority of who I coach, which is competitive CrossFit athletes. So the sport of training. I think what's really interesting about CrossFit, or one of the things that's really interesting, is that we are in the sport of training. So it's something where what you're actually competitive in and being tested in is the thing that you also use to get better, which is not always the case for sports, right? So if I'm a baseball player and I'm a center fielder, I'm gonna have weight room sessions, and it's like very clearly bench press and hammer curls are not the thing that I am actually going and competing in. Even something like, okay, I have batting practice. That's so very clearly different from what you're doing on a daily basis when you're playing a game, that it's like, okay, this is disconnected and they're not necessarily the same. Obviously you need to engage in that to be better, but there's not like this confusion as like, am I competing or am I training? Whereas like that happens all the time for CrossFit athletes, where, for example, it's really easy to get sucked into, this is a training piece that's supposed to be a 70% effort, and you're 5 minutes into a 15-minute AMRAP and you're at like 90% heart rate, right? You're like, oh, I think I might have overshot this a little bit, right? That's very easy to do. And there's people who get sucked into, I want to be at my best all the time when I'm doing a CrossFit Metcon in class or in my own training, right? So it's like, one of the things you have to remind yourself of is you're not always going to be in this ideal state of readiness to be at your best in whatever particular workout you're doing. So the goal isn't for you to go out and be the very best at camps. Again, we talked about it's a little bit weird. So if this was a normal training day and you went in and had the workout we had for camp, right? Power cleans and toe to bar. Yes, you're going to probably execute it to the best of your ability, but your level of readiness isn't going to be so high for that. Like, for example, should I have done no running the day before so my hips and abs feel 100%? Should I have done no sandbag work so my grip's completely fresh for that workout? It's like, okay, in an ideal world, that's what you would do if you were just peaking for that one workout, but you're not, you're training. So one of the important things with training is that you're just accumulating a good amount of quality work. So in order to do that, you're just not gonna be in the place where you're like constantly at your peak fitness. So again, what it looks like is, okay, I might have done toe to bar in my workout yesterday. I have muscle ups in my programming today. I'm going to be a little bit fatigued for it. That doesn't mean I can't do the training. It just means that it's not going to be the absolute best score that I could possibly get. And that's one of the things you just kind of have to be okay with. Like in order for my fitness to go up, I have to take on more workload. In order to do that, I'm not going to be at my peak at all times. So if I'm not at my peak at all times, I'm not going to feel at my best. So like that's one of the things I see people as a mistake that they make is they're always going for the performance side of it. So prioritizing performance or their absolute score over training, which the goal of training is to adapt to what you're doing. So to actually get better and drive up your fitness. So in order to drive up your fitness, you are inevitably going to have to bring along fatigue along with that. So as your fitness improves, it's because you've been taking on more fatigue, more workload. So those things are going to go up at the same time. So your fitness might continue to go up as your fatigue goes up. And that's one of the reasons why people have this experience all the time where it's like, man, we've been working on handstand push-ups the last 6 weeks, and I don't feel like I'm any better at handstand push-ups. And then like 3 weeks down the road, they're not doing handstand push-ups all the time. They're like, my handstand push-ups felt amazing today. And they like, all of a sudden it like comes out of nowhere. It's like, actually, no, you're just not super tired from doing them all the time. So it's like, if you're running training progressions, continuing to build up volume and movements, you're gonna have fatigue that comes along with that. And that shouldn't detract from your confidence going into a competition. So again, maximizing your adaptation in training means that you're gonna have this submaximal accumulation of the work that you're doing. As fitness rises, fatigue is gonna inevitably rise along with that. So a while ago, I was preparing for a podcast that I did, and this was like 2-3 years ago, at least ago, maybe 3-4. And I kind of called this the pyramid of performance. So basically the base of the pyramid is physiological systems. So this is things like the CrossFit Total today, like what are your maxes, okay? What is your aerobic power? So if we were to just go out and do a 5K run, that would be a very good indicator of how you performed in yesterday's workout. Things like that, like muscular endurance. So how's your grip endurance for big sets of total bar, things like that. Then on top of that, you could say this is economy. So you might also call this efficiency. So it's how smooth are you moving? Are your total bar nice and long where you get those straight legs and maximize your momentum out of it, like Chris was saying? Do you have nice fluid movement, right? For example, if your power clean slows down as you get to mid-thigh and then speeds back up, that's obviously not good in terms of minimizing the amount of tension and power that you need across that, right? So it's just like, how well do you move? And then on top of all that is really what I want to talk about today, which is execution. So it's your ability to go out on a competition floor on a particular day with a set workout and be at your best in that workout. So I would call that sort of the art of competing. And actually looking at this now, I would probably likely flip around economy and capacity. So they're like, again, if you're moving well, that's sort of the base of the pyramid, and then you can sort of layer on like training progressions to kind of build those patterns and get more fit, so to speak, on top of that, right? There's kind of no point in polishing a turd, right? So if your burpees are like a strict push-up into like you jump like 3 feet away from the bar, it's like, don't work on like your pressing capacity, right? Like fix your burpee. So I'd probably switch them around. And then within that pyramid, the top of the pyramid, this is sort of what I'd explode that out to. So 3 Venn diagram, thought I'd break that out. So in the middle here, this is your best performance, right? Is the perfect centration of all those things, right? So it's making your game day, so like when you actually go out to compete, making that as streamlined as possible. We'll talk about what specifics of what that means. Minimizing the number of errors that you're making when you're actually out on the floor. So for example, if you do a handstand walk length, it needs to be unbroken and your hand goes 2 inches on the line before you kick down and you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Execution error, right? It's like, okay, if you wouldn't have done that clearly, you would have been better off, right? You miss a snatch when it was like the last portion of the workout or something, things like that. And again, the more higher level competitions you go to, you're gonna see more and more of things that are execution based. And then managing anxiety and nerves, which I think is a huge part of everyone's experience. That is gonna be something that if you're going, especially if the more you have invested into a competition, like, okay, it's one thing if I signed up for a Williamsport 5K and I'm going, because it's gonna disrupt, 90 minutes of my day. Whereas if I, drive somewhere to do something versus if I fly to go somewhere versus if I drag my family along with me, if I have to book a Airbnb and do all this stuff, all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I really hope I don't get injured like the week before this and I get the withdrawal and don't get my money back and all this stuff, right? All of a sudden, like all the what ifs start kind of flooding you. So I think managing your arousal as you go into that is super important. So first we'll talk about streamlining game day. And I think really all this comes down to planning. So yeah, good old Ben said, failing to plan is planning to fail. And I think it really, honestly, that's like, I'm gonna talk about this, but essentially that's what it comes down to, right? If you aren't super diligent, your anxiety is gonna go up and your execution and level of, your fatigue will rise and your execution is gonna go down. So again, I would think of it as like a seesaw. If I'm prepared, that's gonna outweigh my anxiety and my anxiety will lift, right? If I'm underprepared, that's gonna raise my amount of anxiety. And this is true for anything, right? If you have thought through like, okay, what happens if my carbo gain gets stealed in the air or taken by security in the airport because they think it's cocaine, right? Like, what do? It's like, okay, I'm gonna go to the local grocery store. When I get there, I'm gonna buy Gatorade Power and I will make it work, right? So like just thinking through some of the examples of things like, if this happens, then I'm gonna react this way. So again, the more prepared you are, just inevitably, the better things are gonna go. So an example of planning could be something like nutrition, which obviously Stacy's gonna be like, she's ready to pull us apart right now. But I'll do the best I can. So this is obviously like one aspect. Obviously, if you go compete somewhere, you have to eat when you're there, shocker. So let's throw these all up there. Again, let's just pretend you're flying to Texas to do Fittest Experience, right? You're gonna have to get there and get food when you're there because you can't take it all with you. Okay, so first thing that I would do is, well, before you ever get there, is to figure out everything that you're gonna need when you get there so that you don't have to think about it when you're there. So again, that's what I mean, it's kind of like taking some steps back. So first we need to compile a list of easily digestible foods that you can tolerate well. Again, that requires some thinking and some thought and some writing it down and planning. 2, place items and quantities into time slots based on your event type and time. So okay, I have my lift first thing in the morning on day 2. I'll be able to eat some food on this day, and I should be able to have a fair amount of breakfast because I can usually lift fairly well and a little bit more in my gut. Okay, I have 90 minutes in between this workout and this workout, so it's gonna have to be some lighter stuff that I know I'm gonna be able to digest well, so it's gonna be primarily carbs, a lot of stuff in liquid form. Okay, like that kind of bare bones, and then you start to basically piece that into where it needs to go into your schedule. And then you're gonna double check macros and like where you're at with your percentages. So again, for competition, it's gonna be like, okay, I need primarily carbs. Where can I fit maybe some of my fat and protein in other parts of the day where I'm not competing? So like maybe I'll hold off on most of that, put it into my evening meal. What's that gonna be positive of? And then it's also like, where can I go that I'm actually gonna be able to get that breakdown? Because that's not always an easy thing either. Right? So it's like, am I gonna make it in my Airbnb? If I'm in a hotel, I'm gonna have to go out to eat because I'm not gonna have a stove. Okay, what do I have to figure out with that, right? So there's a lot that goes into that. And if you haven't thought about that at all until you get there, that's very stressful. It's like, okay, I'll just go to McDonald's, right? Like that's what ends up happening, right? You're like, decision fatigue, I've been out this competition all day, I don't wanna have to give the bandwidth to it. Okay, we'll just make a bad choice. And that's not ideal, obviously. So planning ahead of time is one example of how you could do that. So this would be an example of what you'd want to do. So basically, again, when Sam and I went to Fittest Experience, he made an itinerary. My wife was very impressed. So it was like, there was Google Maps screenshots of venue, there was details of this is the event, this is the time it is, this is what the event actually is, this is the spot on the venue, the stage where it's located. It was all broken down very detailed, right? And that's what you need because, again, you don't want to have to be like digging through 17 links in Competition Corner to find your next heat time, right? Again, unless sometimes that's dictated to you, but largely you want to try to avoid as much of that as possible. So get detailed with it. So this would be like I think I stole this from when I was at Crash, but something very similar to this. So I have my wake time, so I'm gonna set my alarm for this time, so I have to work backwards. This is when I get in bed. I'm gonna have this breakfast, and I already have detailed as to how far until my next event that is, so I know what I wanna eat. This is when I need to leave the Airbnb with some cushion in case I hit traffic. This is when I need to get to the venue, walk over to the warm-up area. This is when the timestamp I wanna start my warm-up. I'll have it linked to my spreadsheet where I can pull it up and already know this. I already have this memorized, but I'll kind of look at it again, refresh myself. I'll start my warm-up with this amount of time. I'll do my rehearsal 10, 15 minutes before I think I'm gonna get called for my corral time. Okay, my corral time is this time. We walk out, we have 10 minutes until we go. And then afterwards, it's like, this is my flush protocol, and I have, again, 90 minutes until my next one. I know these are the things of options that I have to eat. Again, it's all mapped out there for me. Very little thought that's required. You're just sort of kind of going through the motions with the least amount of input mentally that you need. So again, the big part of planning is that you just want to reduce the amount of mental strain that you have so that you can put as much into your physical performance as possible. So the planning, the reason why you do that, is because you're minimizing your decision making. You're creating predictability, which is going to allow you to, again, minimize those nerves. And then you're reducing the amount of mental fatigue, which, as we know, could kind of artificially elevate your baseline for exertion. So if I'm already at an elevated RPE, everything I do is going to feel more challenging. So if I can reduce that, I'm putting more energy and effort and resources into my physical performance. And then manage anxiety and nerves. Again, if you're prepared, that's going to help lift the amount of anxiety you have in a positive way, like reduce it. So these are the symptoms. This is the reality of what every single person deals with when they go to a competition, regardless of who you are, okay? If you care about it, which hopefully you do. My heart rate is elevated. My palms are sweaty. I have butterflies in my stomach already. So those are the physical symptoms. And then we have thoughts that we could have. The last thing you want to do is ignore the reality of what's happening. It's like, you don't want to just like suppress like reality. It's like, oh yeah, like my forearms are very tired in this workout. I should just do this set unbroken. Like, that's not helpful, right? You have to live in reality. Like, you are constrained by physical laws. Like, it's not helpful if you're like, I'm not anxious, and you're freaking out, right? That's not helping yourself at all. Okay, so what you can do is like, okay, these are the physical symptoms I have. What my choice is how I interpret them, right? So your one option, I have these symptoms. I'm so nervous. I've been working so hard for this moment. This anxiety is terrible. I'm like crippled by the amount of anxiety I have right now. So that's an option that you could have. Another option, I'm so excited. I've been working so hard for this moment. My physical symptoms are the same. I have rapid heart rate. My palms are sweating. I have butterflies. But how I interpret that arousal, which everyone's going to have, is up to me, right? So you can say like, these symptoms that I'm having are going to degrade my performance. I feel crippled by this. Or, you know what? Usually when I feel like this in like a big group of people, and like, I remember camp, we had all that great energy for the CrossFit Total. I lifted great, right? I'm probably gonna hit some PRs today because I'm all ramped up and excited, right? There's two ways that you can interpret the same signals. Other things that are gonna help you manage your anxiety and nerves, be prepared. I think I've said that like half a dozen times now. And then reframe your arousal. And the big part of that's just self-talk, right? Like reminding yourself like, everyone here is nervous. I'm nervous too, that's fine. But one of the things that nerves tells me to do is perform really well, right? If you remind yourself of that, that's really helpful. 3 is move. So one of the things that will be helpful is if you move, right? If you're just forced to sit there, like everybody in the corral is like doing this the whole time. They're like jumping around, right? Because they don't want to like, A, it's part of it, like they're staying warm. But 2, like movement helps you to feel like reduce your anxiety. So normally when I recommend people get to a competition, regardless if it's local or not, like get there and move around, right? That's obviously going to benefit your physical performance, but also does a lot for your mind. So obviously you're not going to be doing, build up to a heavy snatch on that day, right? The day before your competition. But yeah, you might jump on the machine for 10, 15 minutes at an easy pace, stretch out a little bit, hit an easy EMOM of some of the movements that you might see, and then do some more stretching, right? And that'll help you to relax and feel much more comfortable. And then 2 is that you can do some cadence breathing. So anything with like an extended exhale. So like, for example, you might do a 3-second inhale, a 6-second exhale. Or you might do Chris's box breathing where it's 4-second inhale, hold for 4, exhale for 4, exhale, or hold in that exhale for 4. Things like that are helpful. Or you could do like yoga nidra on YouTube, search that, non-sleep deep rest. So basically it's like progressive relaxation type things where you're guided through, basically you're bringing your focus into your body to help you to down-regulate. And that's gonna help you to obviously relax. So those are like really helpful things, especially if you're having a hard time sleeping, that are still gonna be helpful and get your focus away from like negative thoughts sometimes. And then finally, minimizing execution errors. So again, training, I talked about like your ceiling. You're trying to improve your physiological systems. So you're trying to lift to the ceiling of your underlying hardware. So that is the goal of training, right? Raise the ceiling So you're building on your conditioning, you're building your maximal strength numbers, you're working on your movement efficiency, all of those things. And then when you go to compete, the goal is for you to get, if this is my ceiling, is to butt right up against that and get as close as possible, right? So for example, you did that toe to bar workout and power cleans, is to get as close to, okay, this is my grip limitations, this is what my abs are capable of today, and this is where if I were to do, power cleans until I were like on a clock until I'd fail, like where I'm at, okay? When I put those things together, I want to get as close to that potential as I possibly can, right? And obviously that's like more of a conceptual thing in most workouts, but trying to get as close as you can to your performance ceiling is essentially what you're doing by minimizing, your errors. And one of the things that you can do is when you're in training, try to replicate a lot of the things that you're going to be doing in competition. And that's where, if you've never done a particular workout before, and usually you get workouts ahead of time, but say you don't, and you've never done a workout with this exact rep scheme of power cleans and toe to bar, you probably have done a lot of workouts with similar type movements at similar type loadings or similar time domains. And again, if you've been around for a long time, there's going to be a lot of things that you can predict. Okay, I know I'm going to be around here in this workout, or you know what, I bet you around minute 5 of that 8-minute ascending workout is where things are going to get really sticky, and I'm going to have to kind of lean in mentally for that, right? Whereas if you don't have a lot of that experience, you're like, I've never done a rep scheme like that, and if I have, it's usually like 5 minutes, so I don't really know what that last 3 is going to be like, right? It's going to change your perspective. So the more experience you have just doing varied workouts like in CrossFit, obviously the better off you're going to be, and the better you're going to butt up against that performance ceiling. When you actually know what the workouts are, you obviously then can start to practice elements of them or the entire thing. You can also visualize them, which is going to be super helpful. So you want to involve as many of your senses as you possibly can. So literally you could be sitting on your airplane as you travel there. You can visualize each of your workouts, where you're going to be chalking up, what your transition time's going to be looking like, where you're at in the venue, where your other competitors are at in the workout. There's so much that you can take into that, and you want it to basically be like your perfect execution of that workout. So you're moving through basically in first person, almost like you're moving yourself through a video game, CrossFit video game. It'd be super fun, right? And then finally, you can obviously practice parts of it or the entire thing if it's released far enough ahead of time. So say it's released 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, you can actually walk through, hey Stacey, can you come judge me and no rep me a couple times on these wall balls, which is inevitably gonna happen. And that way it's like maybe faced with some of the outside factors or adversity that you might be faced with when you actually get out there. So Chris talked about this, run your race, and then it's also a race, so when it's time to race. And this is another way to maybe think about that, or an experience that a lot of people have when they're competing, is you oftentimes have tested workouts, sometimes multiple times if they're weeks ahead of time released. So then you have this experience of, I know what this workout feels like. Normally this is when things start to get really challenging. This is where I really have to lean in. This is gonna be my break strategy. And then sometimes you get out on the floor and either things aren't set up the exact way that you expected, or you get out there and that bar feels like someone just, as Chris would say, turn the gravity on in here. Man, what do you do if you're in the workout and it's like, my body is telling me that this is different from how it was in training? And oftentimes it's for example, say it was, you've been practicing and you're running outside and you were doing the Zor camp, workout, even though, it got changed a couple times, but you get the idea, right? If you were practicing that workout and now you go and you do it and it's 85 degrees versus 65. It's you're not going to be able to hold the same paces. Things are going to have to be different. So at the end of the day, you have to trust that how I feel to a certain degree needs to be accounted for here. So if things are completely different from how they felt in training, that's not a good sign, and I might need to alter it a little bit. Again, there's other times where you might be like, you know what, I feel great in the beginning of this workout. Probably shouldn't just send it, right? And I think a lot of this comes with experience, is that there's a place to race and to be aware of your surroundings and what's going on. And there's also time where you just need to stay within yourself. And normally, the majority of the workout, you want to stay within yourself. and know, again, this is sort of where the crux of the workout is. And then that last bit is when you can start to take in a little more situational awareness as to where your other competitors are doing and how they might be reacting. Competing is a skill. Like all the things I just talked about, I can say that and I can conceptualize what it is because I've been through it. Whereas if you haven't necessarily been through that, you probably have a hard time understanding exactly what you're going to experience and how you could leverage those things to your best result. So I think one of the things that's necessary, even for people who have a lot of competition experience, is if you want to be at your best at one competition, do a competition before that, right? Not like directly before we were dealing with like fatigue or like injury or whatever, but like you're going to have to compete in order to be your best competitor, right? Where a lot of people think, I will just train myself into being an animal and then I'll go compete and I'll win. It's like that very, very rarely happens, right? Unless you're just like completely at a different level, right? But for the most part, it's like refining your process in competition is what allows you to be better at your next competition, right? And it also teaches you very important things that you take with you back into training. And honestly, like something like this weekend is a great example of that. We kind of call this like quasi-competitive, but like there's gonna be things like, okay, this is obviously out of the realm I'm normally in. I'm doing things that I'm not completely comfortable with. In some ways, I feel like I might be getting measured against other people, right? And then when you go back into like your normal routines and rhythms, you take some of that stuff with you, and obviously it's experiences that you are hopefully having positive experiences to take, and that kind of like incorporate that into how you're kind of moving through your new training, right? So it's like, okay, I now know that if I race in round 2 of a 5-round workout, that things don't usually go super well for that, right? If I try to get out ahead and buy time and do a heavy barbell, I'm probably gonna get a couple no reps and make myself look like a fool, right? And sometimes it requires falling flat in order to do that. And that's something that, again, you're putting yourself out there. You have to be okay with, you know what, I could look kind of dumb when I'm out there. But if you don't want to do that, I don't know, maybe stay home. So, last thing here, practice is great. And in order to get better at something and refine it, you have to practice it. But it becomes a whole lot better when you do it with intention. So, intentional practice. So yes, you're doing the thing, but you're also intentionally bringing additional awareness and reflection on the far side of that along with it, so that like it accelerates your learning. Not just competing and being sort of mindless in it and being a goldfish and forgetting everything, but once you do it, be aware of what happened, take some literal notes as to like what's going on so that you can continue to refine your process. So I had an experience recently. I did an online qualifier and I tested a workout. It was like released, read through the workout on the website, did the workout, Stacey judged me. It went pretty well. And I missed a standard when I read back through. Afterwards, I went through, read the entire PDF, middle of the, scroll past the score sheet, and it's like, go past the final thing, and I'm like, there's like middle of the paragraph, you have to weigh your weights on a scale. I'm like, since when did they do this, right? So I had to redo the workout. I think it was like 48 hours later. Did way worse, like just 14th rep of my muscle off, no rep. And then I failed it again, I think maybe one more time. So that was not a good score, way worse than my first time. So 24 hours, not even 24 hours later, did it again. So basically, I now did that workout 3 times, right? Whereas if I would have just done it the correct way the first time, I would have had a fine score and been able to move on, less volume in the total qualifier, might have done better. Likely I would have, okay? So I was like, afterwards, I could just sit there and cry over soured milk, or I could like try to reflect and improve what I'm doing. So first thing I did, I was like, okay, that was a problem. And obviously it was a mistake for me not to read line by line through that PDF and to highlight every single thing that mattered. So the first thing I did was I was like, okay, there were some other things too. Like one time my camera was out of focus and it messed up my workout. I was like, okay, this needs to change. So I need 2 cameras, I need to read through everything. I was like, all right, I need to make a list. So this is what I created afterwards. This is a qualifier prep checklist. So this will give you, again, one more time, I'll reinforce the importance of planning here. Prior to the release, okay, I'm gonna get ahead of my work so that I have less mental load, right? Prepping my food, contacting judges, getting projected time slots that I can test the workouts, setting up my camera with certain settings and new batteries and SD cards, right? Getting my camera of iPhone storage correct and making sure that I have the tripod ready and all the stuff, right? Creating a spreadsheet with all my warm-ups, and that can be at least some templated warm-ups before it's even released. And then when it actually gets released, okay, this is my order of operations that I need to go through. I know I'm excited and I want to get the workouts, I want to start planning all the workouts, but first I need to go through this stuff. So, okay, I'm going to review every single standard, I'm going to read every rule, I'm going to look at all the media that's released from the company about the qualifier, read it line by line. I'm going to write down the stuff that's unique or different or that, isn't normally the case for that. And then I'm going to copy and paste the workouts directly from the website into my spreadsheet. No typing it out, because sometimes you write the open workout for the entire morning class and they did one movement that was supposed to be for a second, right? Things like that. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna copy and paste it directly from that website, and then I'm gonna print out score sheets, probably 2 or 3, because I'll probably have to redo, give them to my judges, explain how I actually would like to be, like them to tell me my reps. I'm gonna then formulate my strategy and build out warm-ups and then put it into the spreadsheet. And then when I actually go to do the workouts, I'm gonna visualize the workout through, do any warm-ups that I need to do, kind of plan out how I actually want to lay out the workout on the floor, where my camera's going to be, so that I can see both the clock and all my movements, and yeah, give a favorable angle for like my movement standards. And then I'll go and actually set up the floor before I even start my warm-up, put my phone on airplane mode, do not disturb, right? And then like actually again talk to my judge. And then after the workout, these are my steps that I'm going to do in terms of getting my video uploaded, making sure that I'm watching back and seeing any no reps, doing my double checking my rep count, renaming the video, putting it into a spreadsheet. There's a lot of steps there, right? And if you don't do that, it's super easy to just like, oh, I missed 1 or 2 of those. And again, you might as well not even done it at that point because it's all useless. So again, like that's the start of an idea of like, okay, that's the level of preparation that you can go into that's going to help you reduce the amount of anxiety that you have going into a competition like that. So I just kind of wanted to illustrate. So for us, we're going to refine that skill of competing. So we got to practice.